So we'll go ahead and get rolling here. For those of you that might be new to PSTrax, I just have a couple of slides here just to give you a brief overview of us and kind of what we do. So we were founded back in 2009, and we were actually the original company that kind of was focused on operational checks and logistics management. So that's been our niche that we've specialized in for 11 years. And we're actually based out of Littleton, Colorado, but we work with departments all around the country. So we have about 400 agencies, big and small. We have, smaller volunteer departments all the way up to big metropolitan departments that we work with. And one thing we're really proud of is our retention rate. So across all of our clients, we have a 98.5% retention rate. And I think that speaks to a couple of things. Number one, the system itself is very functional. So this is kind of what the system looks like. We basically consolidate all of your checks into one place. The crews log in, they see exactly what they need to do. They don't even have to remember what to do. It'll just prompt them with what's due that day. And we customize it for every agency we work with. So as you all know, every department is a little bit different. You all have your own processes that you've spent a lot of time developing. And so we customize and configure the system based on how you would like it set up for you guys and what works best for your department. And we'll talk a lot about, especially today, kind of the vehicle checks. And what's nice about the system is all of those check sheets, all of those logs will be electronic. So you can go into the system and download that history or export it whenever you need to. Another big component we'll touch on today for vehicle checklists is when you have an issue. So as the crews are going out and doing their checks, if they see a problem, how do they report that to the right people? And if you're using paper or spreadsheets today, a lot of times that'll be having, right now, the crews will be picking up the phone or they'll be sending emails back and forth to kind of communicate that. And so we'll show you how with PSTrax we can automate that communication process just to streamline things a little bit more. The system itself is all cloud-based. So what's nice about that is you can use any device that you would like. And you can also have multiple crew members doing checks at the same time. So for any of you that might, as part of your vehicle checks, you might want to have the crews do a full inventory of all the compartments. Instead of just one person going out there and doing all that work, you can have 3 or 4 people all out there helping at the same time using their different devices to check that off. We do support barcode scanning if that's a requirement you have. And then finally, you always own your own data. So we host it for you, but all those vehicle checks and the vehicle logs and any other records that we may keep for you for our other modules, all that data is yours and you have full rights to it. And finally, a little bit about us. What kind of makes PSTrax unique is that we actually build the system for you as well. So for those of you that have worked with us, you've kind of experienced this. But basically what we do is just have you send us your documentation. So all of your check sheets, your DOT inspections, we have NFPA guidelines, but anything that you want checked off, we just have you email that to us. And from there, our team will kind of manage the rest. So we handle the whole project. And we'll take your data and your different checklists, and we'll actually import that into the system for you and set it up and configure it the way you would like it. And then once we have it all built, and usually the build process takes about 6 weeks for those that might be curious. So about 6 weeks is kind of the average timeline. But once we have it built, we do all the training as well. So we'll train your folks on how to use it, help you roll it out to the crews. And then we also make unlimited ongoing changes. So as you all know, things change a lot in the fire service. And if you're an EMS agency, you could get new rigs or new equipment. And so anytime those changes happen, you can just call us up and we can make those for you for no additional charge. That's just part of our customer service. Or if you'd like to make those changes yourself, you can certainly do that as well. You have that ability to go in the system and make those changes.
Hey, Ryan, can I jump in and interrupt you real quick? Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Robbie.
Hey, Brian had a question. I know we do get this. from time to time. Thanks for the question, Brian. He's asking, as we own the data, as we own our own data, what format do we get it in if we want to export that, or if potentially we want to leave? If you could just touch on that real quick. Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, thanks, Brian, for that question. So, first of all, you can export your data at any time in the system, so you can go in there and export it. If you were to leave, what we can do is we can provide all that data in a CSV file for you, or a similar type file, so you have it all. And we have had a couple instances where folks will leave. Usually, that's due to like a merger, where a bigger department might acquire them. Um, but in those situations, what we've done is we've actually left their system turned on. We kind of deactivate the ability to make any additional checks, but we leave their system on so that they can still log in and still access all of their records even after they've left. So that's kind of how we handle that. So yeah, thanks for that question. Okay, and today we'll kind of dive into the NFPA 1911 checks, and hopefully you're all a little bit familiar with this, but this is available for free on the NFPA website. So if you don't have a copy of it, you can actually go online and view these documents for free in your web browser. If you want to download a copy, they do charge a fee for that. But basically, 1911 is all about the inspection, the maintenance, the testing, and ultimately the retirement of your emergency vehicles. And so we'll kind of go through that a little bit. It's a pretty long document. It's 117 pages long, so we we won't dive into everything today. But if you want a fun read, it's out there for you to kind of go through. Two of the bigger sections that we'll kind of focus on today is the daily, weekly visual and operation checks, and so we'll go through that. And basically, they recommend, NFPA recommends that those type of checks should be done within 24 hours of a run, or at least weekly. A lot of departments will be doing these daily, so more frequently, but that's kind of the very minimum that NFPA recommends. And they also suggest that when you're doing those checks, you have a process for users to basically identify deficiencies. So when things break, how do we identify that? And then how do we report that to the right people and take that vehicle out of service if it's a bigger issue? And all of this information needs to be recorded, obviously. So you have a historical record of not only the checks, but all of the discrepancies and any repairs that happen to those vehicles. The other section we're going to get into is kind of the inspection, maintenance, and testing of. And in the document, if you're familiar with it, it breaks down all these different areas and goes through in very specific detail. How do you inspect, maintain, and test these different components of your vehicles? And so we won't go into all of those today. As I mentioned before, within PSTrax, we actually have a baseline of all the NFPA checks. So if you don't happen to have those, don't worry. We have a baseline that we can use as a starting point. But if you ever want to customize those checks or add additional checks, we can add those into the system as well. These are the next few slides here are a couple of the screenshots, and I wasn't able to pull everything in, but these are some of the examples of the paper check sheets that they have in NFPA, the 1911 guidelines. So this one here is for a daily, weekly check. And so we see this a lot of times. Departments that might still be using paper, they'll physically have these paper sheets out in the field that they might be using. Um, and so this is an example of what NFPA recommended for that. And again, unfortunately, I can't go through all of this, and this is kind of just a screenshot of the first part of that example. But I recommend going online, and if you go to the appendix, you can kind of see the full worksheet that they have. The second one is a quarterly annual check. And so doing the quarterly or annual, Some departments will do this monthly, but really this is a more thorough check. So we're kind of doing a basic or a more basic check daily or weekly, and then on a monthly or quarterly basis, doing kind of a more advanced inspection, and then also on top of that, doing regular PM type of maintenance checks. So for preventative maintenance, making sure we have schedules for that with all of our predefined checks that we want to verify for each one of our trucks. If you're using a ladder truck or anything with a ladder aerial, obviously there's a whole different inspection for that type of equipment. And so I put this one in here just for y'all to see, because within PSTrax, what we do is we actually customize the checks according to the vehicle. So every vehicle is a little bit different. It might have different checks. Like in this case, if it has an aerial, it'll have an aerial checklist that goes with it. But it'll also have different equipment and inventories on each vehicle as well. So what we do is we actually customize not only the maintenance checks, but also all the inventory that goes along with that rig. So every compartment, we break out and list out the items that are inside. Same thing with pumps, same concept. You know, if it's a vehicle that has a pump, then there's obviously a whole nother checklist for that. Now, when we talk about checklists, one of the challenges, or actually there's a couple of challenges that go into this, and why many departments still do these type of checks on paper or spreadsheets. So number one, there's a lot of different checklists, as you know. So we have NFPA 1911. That's just kind of a starting point, a baseline, and that's kind of what we went through previously. On top of that, every state typically has DOT checks. We work with a lot of folks in California. They have very thorough DOT checks. Other states have their own variation of that. So many times agencies are required to not only do their NFPA checks, but any DOT checks that might be required. And then on top of that, you might have department specific checklists that just your department has put in place for different procedures, whether it be preventative maintenance or other, you know, inventory checks, anything like that. So when you kind of wrap all that up, what it ends up being is a lot of different checklists that the crews, you know, have to remember to do and then document. And in the fire service, there's additional complexity on top of that. So every vehicle is a little bit different. It carries a little bit different equipment on it, has different checklists. There's different check schedules. So some of these will be done daily, some will be monthly, some might be weekly, some might be every 3 months, etc. And on top of that, there's crews and shifts of crews that are sharing all this inventory, you know, all the equipment and all the vehicles together. So when you look at it from that perspective, it's kind of understandable why a lot of folks have have kind of, I guess, struggled to make that transition into a more automated system, because there's a lot of moving parts to this process. But with PSTrax, what we want to help you do is kind of take that leap from moving from a more paper-based system to an electronic version of that. And I put a couple of screenshots on this slide. The top one is, and I'll kind of show you this in the demo, but the top one here is basically showing what a crew member sees when they log in. So instead of having to, in their minds, remember all the different check sheets and when things might be due, what we do in PSTrax is we actually build that customized schedule for each rig with all the different frequencies that you might have. And then for a crew member, when they log in, the system just tells them right here in this box, 88 is exactly how many vehicle checks that they have due today. So it'll just prompt them with whatever is due based on that master schedule that we create. When the crews go in and do their checks, this is an example like on engine one, they can it'll bring them right to their checklist, so they can go down and check off items. And if they have an issue, they can set an alert, which will email the appropriate people in the department. So I mentioned a lot we're still using paper or spreadsheets, and actually the number is 80%. So if you happen to be in that category, certainly don't feel alone. Again, that's where we kind of come in to help. And what we want to do, we say this a lot, but we don't want to reinvent your wheel, so to speak, but we just want to take what you're doing today and convert that into an electronic process. So let's dive into kind of the PSTrax side and how we do that. Today, obviously, we're going to focus on the vehicle module. We have 7 modules in total. So these are kind of our other modules. We won't dive into these today, but if your team would like more information or a separate demo on those, just feel free to put that in the chat and we can help you with that. And I should, before I move on, the modules are a la carte. So if vehicles happens to be your low hanging fruit, you can just start with that one. And then always, if you want to add other modules later on, you can do that as well. Okay, so within the vehicle module, as I mentioned before, we have the NFPA guidelines already built in here. On top of that, you can add any other checklists that you would like. So agency specific inspections, DOT inspections, your inventory lists, etc. We can build all that in here. So everything that rolls on the rig is included. All the compartments we break out one by one, and then we'll list out the different items that are inside. You can have unlimited checks and unlimited check schedules. So any frequency that you want. And again, we just basically have you email those to us and then we build them into the system. And from a pricing perspective, we won't get into pricing too much, but just so you know, we kind of have 2 categories of vehicles. We count up all of your heavy vehicles, which are the big ones with a lot of inventories like engines, trucks, ambulances, heavy rescues. And then the second category is support vehicles. So typically these will be lighter inventoried vehicles like BC units, tender, tankers, utility vehicles, things like that. Within the vehicle module, I talked about this a little bit before, but one of the important processes that NFPA talks about is those discrepancies. So when crews are doing their checks, if something is broken, how do they notify the right people in the department of that issue and communicate that effectively so that they receive it and know what's going on? So within PSTrax, what we have is a process that we call the alert workflow. And basically, what this does is it allows the crews to communicate those issues. So in this case, on engine 1, we have a vehicle maintenance issue. It's a flat tire. We can mark it as urgent if it's an out of service type of issue. And then the crews can also attach pictures. So this is really handy, and typically the fleet maintenance folks really like this component. But the crews can take pictures, attach those, and then basically this alert will be sent off to the right people in the department based on the category of issues. So you can actually nominate who needs to receive this. So in this case, again, it's a vehicle maintenance alert, so it's probably going to go to our mechanics. But if we have an SCBA issue, you might have a different group of people down here below. And when we hit set alert, that'll be emailed and texted to these folks. That's kind of how they're going to receive it. Okay, so that's kind of how the module works from a high level. I'm going to come back to that slide in a little bit here, but I'm going to go ahead and hop over to the demo site. And Robbie, I'll just check in with you. Are there any questions so far?
No, give you nothing further at this time. Just the question from Brian. Give you a quick second here to regroup before you jump into the demo site. But again, as Ryan jumps into the demo site, I just want to let all of our attendees know if there's something you would like to simulate or something for that's maybe department specific, as Ryan had mentioned. We're happy to run through that and simulate that for you as well. So.
Yep. Yeah, thanks, Robbie. Okay, well, let's go ahead and hop in here. Again, just as another reminder, it's all cloud-based, so you can use any device that you'd like, and every crew member will have their own username and login. So whatever they do in the system, whatever they check off, that'll be documented and logged. When they sign in, it's going to default them to their home station. So I'm at station 1 right now. This is kind of the dashboard for station 1. If I'm ever at a different location, if I'm filling in somewhere, for overtime, I can always change my view and go to a different spot. But I'll go ahead and go back to station 1 here. So on the dashboard for station 1, we see 3 sections. The schedule on the left, this is kind of all 7 of our modules. And anywhere you see a number, that basically represents something that's due for the crews to complete that day. And I'll get into this in 1 second here. Also on the homepage is any open alerts. So when we do set an alert, that'll go off to the right people. But what's really nice is those alerts also get posted right here on the homepage as well. So that way, all the crews at station 1, A shift, B shift, C shift, when they log in, they're going to be able to see those alerts. And if there's any updates or comments, they'll see those as well. So what we're trying to do is just keep everyone in the loop and hopefully eliminate a lot of the emails and the phone calls that typically go back and forth. And then finally, the journal over here on the right, this is like a digital whiteboard. So any communications that you'd like to post up, it could be pass on reports, training. What else do we have here? Like a station log, you could do station tours, all that kind of stuff you can post here, and then the crews will see that when they log in. So kind of the way the vehicle checks work, when the crews do log in, if I scroll down here, they're just going to see the vehicles that are currently located at their station. So I can see I have these vehicles. Notice on each vehicle you have the call number, and you can also have the unique identifier, because what we want to do with all of the different checks and inspections is make sure that stays associated with a particular vehicle. So this is engine 1, number 2526, and we have 66 items that are due. So I can click right in there, and this will bring me right to my checklist here. So as a crew member, I can just literally start going down the list and performing my checks. And I'm just going to do these 4 just as an example, because sometimes you'll get called out to a fire or distracted and you might not get done with everything. So I'm just going to log these first 4 off. And this is our review page. So these are the 4 that we did. And once I log these, they're all going to be documented in the system as being completed. And you'll also notice they'll disappear off of our schedule until the next time they're due. So those have now disappeared. If I go back to our homepage, right here on engine 1, we'll see our number of checks has gone down by 4 because I completed those. So that's kind of how the system works. From a records perspective, all that information. Oh yeah, go ahead, Robbie.
Hey, Ryan, yeah, I was just
Question?
waving my hand over here, getting your attention. Hey, question from Jeremy. Thanks for the question, Jeremy. Can you add, asking if you add a template to that pass down log, more importantly, like a Word or Excel?
Yeah, great question, Jeremy. Currently, the journal is kind of a text field, so there's not a template to it yet. Although that is something that we're looking at enhancing kind of early next year, for specifically the station log, the pass down report, like you were mentioning, so that you could actually define the specific categories that you wanted to track, and then that would be basically just be the same consistent information each time. So hopefully that answered your question. If not, let me know. But yeah, right now we can define the different categories. So whatever, like pass on report, training, you can have any type of category you want. But in terms of the information inside here, I'll just show you one. It's kind of like this. So just kind of a general text field at this point. Thanks, Robbie.
Yeah.
Okay, so kind of going back to the checks here, what this will look like once you have those documented is if we go to logs and reports, in the logs section. Oh yeah, go ahead, Robbie.
Hey, Brian. One more thing. Jeremy was asking, I think you mentioned if we would be adding that. He's asking if there's a timeline, like first or second quarter, for example, of next year where we'd be adding that feature.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I would say, Jeremy, Q1 would be a safe estimate on that for next year. It's something we're already looking at for the station module. And just so you know, that journal section is available no matter what modules you purchase. So if you just buy the vehicle module, you can still use the journal, or if you use any of our other modules, that journal feature is still there. So that's just kind of a generic functionality that we make available with the system. But in terms of, yeah, the enhancement that I talked about, I'd say probably into Q1 for next year. Yeah, thanks, Robbie, for letting me know about
Thanks.
that one. Yeah, no worries. Okay, so yeah, for the vehicle checks, as we log those green check boxes, those are going into the log section. So from a historical records perspective, you can pull up a vehicle like engine one, and we can look at everything if we want to. We can go as far back in time as we want, or if you want to drill down all the way to a specific task, like as an example, on our weekly checks, we have a miles and hours group, and one of the tasks that we complete is an odometer reading. So I can go back, I'll just go back 2 years. So I went back 2 years, and this is showing me every single time that we've done an odometer check. So we can see when it was completed over here on the left, when it was scheduled. We can see what crew member completed it. So in this case, it was Nathan. And anytime something was done on time, you'll see this little green circle. But if it was done late, it'll show up with an orange circle here. So that's just kind of a quick visual, so you can see, kind of see when things were done. And then all of this information can be exported either into Excel or PDF. So that's kind of, typically how it'll work. Hopefully, most of the times when your crews are doing checks, it'll be green check boxes as they do those. However, we'll go back into our checklist here for engine one. If we happen to have a new issue as we're doing our checks, we can set one of those alerts by clicking this red yield sign here. So we'll say, dent in the bumper. Sorry, one thing I forgot to point out, for each of these tasks, you can also attach training resources. So if you want to link pictures or, reference documents, you can link out to training videos like this one. So I just wanted to point that out. Anywhere you see a little paperclip icon, that's what that represents for those tasks. But going back to our alert here, I'll set a dent in the bumper alert. And once I set that, because we have that alert, it'll automatically bring us to the alert details page. So this is where the crew member can enter more information about that problem. And we can see here, it kind of has been defaulted to vehicle maintenance in this case, but we can have any type of category that we'd like. So these are all customizable, just depending on how you would like to kind of, delegate those issues. But for each category down here below, these are the folks that we've nominated to receive it. So you can have required people, which would be in light gray. You can also have optional folks, or if you just need to copy someone like on an email, you can copy any other user in the system. So sometimes, especially with bigger agencies, you might have different approval workflows. So you can use this to copy the appropriate person and include them on that notice. We can attach pictures as well. I'll just grab I don't think I have a dent in the bumper picture, but I'll just grab I think I have a flat tire picture here. Here we go. So I'll attach that. So again, this is nice, especially for the mechanics, because when they receive it, they'll be able to see the pictures and get a little bit better understanding of what's going on. And when we set the alert, all these folks are going to receive it via email and text. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll send that alert out. And once it's been set, it'll bring us back here to our checklist. In the upper right-hand corner, you'll see that new alert that we just posted. So it's going to be visible right there. And also back here on the home page, we're going to see that alert right here at the top. So it's going to be front and center for the crews when they log in. Typically what will happen is after an alert gets posted, then as it kind of goes through the workflow process, different folks will add comments or updates to it. So in this case, maybe let's say our mechanic just wants to say, received by mechanic, be out tomorrow, to check on it. So whatever updates that you'd like to add, you can attach those. And once we save that, that'll just get added right there to the alert. So again, all the crew members will be up to date with the latest news on that. And eventually, when it gets fixed or resolved, we can close the alert out. So we're just going to say we fixed it. You can attach other files like invoice forms or part order forms, anything like that, and also include the cost for that particular issue. And then we're going to close it. Once it gets closed, we'll see here in a second that alert will disappear off of the homepage because the crew members don't need to see that anymore. But all that information is getting archived kind of behind the scenes. So from a reporting perspective, you can go into the alert archive and we can pull up engine one. And you can look at all the alerts, or if we just want to pull up like all of the vehicle maintenance alerts, we can do that. And I'll just do this month. But when you select your date range, it'll just list them all right here below one by one. And it'll keep all the notes regarding that alert. You'll have all the pictures right there, so you can reference those as well. And then just like the logs that I showed earlier, you can export the alerts here. So, or print them if you need to. Okay, so that's kind of how the alerts work. Couple other things I wanted to show. Usually these scheduled checks here, these will typically happen in the morning most of the time when the crews get in, but during the day, maybe you have a new issue, you get back from a fire and there's a new problem. The crews can do what we call as needed checks, and these can be performed anytime during the day. And when you click into as needed checks, you'll see all of your different as needed checklists. So we could pull up our daily checks if we just have like a new issue we want to report. So we can pull those up here. Maybe we have a new leak, a new oil leak. We can report that. You can also use these as needed checks for fuel logs if you want to capture that, and even post-call inventory checks. So when the crews get back from a fire, if you would like them to actually go through the compartments and verify that they have everything, you can use these as needed checks for that as well. Okay, going back here to our home page, I wanted to walk through the example of if you have a vehicle that goes out of service, how do you kind of manage that process? So with engine one, it's really simple. If it does go out of service, we can click the status right here and mark it out of service. You can also deactivate all the scheduled checks that go with it, because if it's getting worked on in the shop, typically they won't be getting the scheduled checks during that time. So you can actually deactivate those if you'd like. So we'll go ahead and mark it just as out of service. And in a moment here, it'll turn red for us. There we go. So now this vehicle has been marked out of service. We can clearly see that. Now what you can do is actually physically move the rig. So if that vehicle goes down to the maintenance shop to get worked on, we can actually move it there. So we'll take it out of station one and we're going to move it down to our maintenance shop. And when we do that, you'll see here in a second, it disappears out of station one because it's no longer assigned there. But if I go and I'm going to change my view up here at the top, and we'll go to our maintenance shop dashboard. So this is kind of basically showing all the vehicles at our shop right now. We'll see there's engine one that we just moved over. So you can basically move those vehicles just depending on the location where they're at. And usually in this scenario, what you would do is then grab a reserve unit to take engine one's place while it's being worked on. So you would, find your reserve and then move that over to station one to take its place. So that's kind of how you can manage those vehicles as they move around. I'm going to go ahead and move engine one back to station one. There we go. And what's really handy, especially for the fleet maintenance folks, is we have the status report up here at the top. And what this shows you is kind of a dashboard of all your vehicles across the department. And I kind of prefer the table view here because it lets you filter as well. We can see here are all of our vehicles. We see the status of them right now, all of our reserve units. We can see if the checklists are active or inactive. So this is, excuse me, kind of a nice high-level dashboard just to see all of those vehicles in one place. And I'm going to go back. We'll go back to station one here. And I'll show you just a couple of other items. When you are moving those vehicles in and out of service, what's important, especially from a NFPA and records perspective, is to be able to have that documentation. It's also important to have that documentation if you're ever trying to justify replacing a rig, as probably a lot of you know. So we have an out of service report here. And this is pretty cool. You can pull up a vehicle and the date range you want. And this will automatically calculate that out of service time for you. And then at the bottom, it'll aggregate it. So as you're doing your forecasting and your planning, if you have, a rig that's maybe out of service for half the year, this report becomes pretty valuable because you can take that to the community or to the city council to try to get a new one bought for it. Yeah, go ahead, Robbie. Question? Well, I think you might be on mute.
I am on mute. So sorry about that, Ryan. Hey, question coming in from Michael regarding moving apparatus, from the maintenance shop, for example, as you just ran us through. Who is able to move that apparatus, or who needs to have the rights in order to do that?
Yeah, great question, Michael. I apologize for kind of not touching on that. That is a permissions-based feature. So basically, you can determine who you want to have the ability to do that. So it kind of depends on different departments, what their process is. But yeah, in the user settings, you can determine who has the ability to move those vehicles.
Great, thanks, Ryan.
Sure. Yeah, no worries. Okay. Couple final items here, and then we'll kind of open it up for Q&A. When you do have a vehicle that moves out of service, a lot of departments, if they have a reserve unit come up, they have to physically transfer items over to that reserve unit. And when they transfer those inventories, many departments will just track that on the whiteboard or a piece of paper. And so within the system, One other item we have is transfer checklists. And this is basically used anytime you're doing a changeover. So I'm just going to do an engine changeover here. But you can select your starting vehicle. So in this case, engine 1, we can select what vehicle we're moving to. So we're going to move to engine 2. And then down here below, these are all the items we can move over. So we can select the ones that we're moving. If you have a standard list of items, that's even better because we can just build that standard list here, and then the crews can just, verify that they're moving all those items over. But essentially, when the crews do this, what this feature does is it'll keep a record of that transfer until ultimately those items get moved back, and then it'll close the transfer. But it'll capture what user, what firefighter or what medic moved those items over, and then what person moved them back when that primary vehicle gets back in service. All right, and the final item I wanted to go through a little bit is in the slides. There, I talked a lot about how we customize it for each vehicle, and so I wanted to go into the apparatus schedule. And this is an administration page, so only admins would ever see this. But basically, this is I call it the master schedule that we build for every vehicle. So this is Engine 1's master schedule. And our team initially builds this for you. So when you send over your check sheets and your inventory list, we build out this. But basically, every checklist, every piece of inventory item that resides on that truck or relates to that truck is going to be in this master schedule. So in our demo site, we have some daily checks. We break those down by the task group with the individual tasks. And then each one is scheduled. So these are done every day. We have some weekly checks built in here. So these are done every 7 days. I think we have a monthly, yeah, we have a monthly inventory. So this, you can see, is all of our inventory compartments with the specific items inside. And this is done on the first day of each month. SCBA, et cetera. So basically all the different components we kind of build in there for you. So all of your NFPA checks, any DOT checks you have, any department specific checklists, we build all that right in this spot. Anytime you have changes, you can call us up and we'll help with those changes, but it's also really easy to make those changes yourself. So if, for example, if I want to add a new task, I can go in here and we'll just put a new task and I'll save that. And then that'll just get added right to our list. I'm going to go ahead and delete that one just so I don't forget about it. You can also move things, copy things. You can do it for individual tasks or individual inventory items. Or if you want to copy a whole unit, because sometimes there'll be some standardization across the units. So if you get a new rig and it's really similar to another one, you can just copy that whole basically mirror image of the other rig, and then you can customize it a little bit if you need to. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and hop back to the home page. I just wanted to share that because that's kind of where all these numbers here on the home page are being populated from, is that apparatus schedule behind the scenes. Robbie, I'll kind of circle back to you. Any new questions I can help answer?
Yeah, we did have a couple come in. I was just saving them. Thanks for the questions, guys. So Jeremy's got a question about controlled medication checks and moving them over to a reserve. So, and Jeremy, thanks for clarifying this. In other words, I'll just read directly what he wrote. In other words, if you move the drug box over from engine 1 that was checked in the morning to a reserve, is there a chain of custody for those controlled meds?
So okay, I'm just reading it here to make sure I understand. Yeah, yeah, there is, Jeremy. So our controlled substance module, we didn't really touch on that today. That's a separate module, and you kind of get to it from this spot up here at the top. But yeah, every single handoff of those vials is documented, and the box. So if you do move it to reserve, that's documented. All the handoffs, like the arriving checks, the usage events, restock events, those are all documented as well within that module. And happy, Jeremy, to share a demo of that for you, if that'd be helpful.
Great. And then thanks, Ryan, on that. And
Mhm.
then from Michael, I think he kind of asked this as, well, jump into Michael's question quick. Kind of asked this as you were going through and changing, you can customize some of the checks and do some of that on your own. So hopefully that answered Michael. He asked, can you add or change items on the truck from management and then make the checklist different from in-house at the firehouse? Hopefully, I think, Brian, you touched on most of that again. If you want to elaborate a little bit more, or if there's anything further I can clarify for you, Michael.
Yeah, and Michael, just to kind of add on a little bit to reiterate what I went through a bit ago, you can customize every single vehicle, every single location. So in that apparatus schedule is kind of where we set all that up. But you can have every component. You can move things around, reorder them, delete things, add things as you need to.
Great. And then some follow-up back to Jeremy with his question. So regarding controlled substances, do you have to perform handoff check if you are moving to a reserve? And can you change the compartment names? And the last one, we can take the yeah. So does that make sense, Ryan? Sorry.
Yeah, yeah, Michael, I'll answer yours here quick because it's kind of relevant to the page I'm on now, and then Jeremy, I'll answer your questions next. Michael, yeah, you can customize the compartment names. So just as an example, if I scroll down a little bit, here's some of our compartment names in our demo site. But yeah, you can call these whatever you'd like. We just label those however you'd like to label the different compartments. And then Jeremy, let me hop back to yours. Um, oh, okay. I see. Yeah, you're just saying we could take some of those controlled med questions offline, and that's great. I can follow up with you, Jeremy. Um, on the controlled substances, I saw your previous question about if there's a if the box moves to a reserve, do they have to do a handoff? Typically on the controlled substances, the box, most people will just assign the box to a station. Um, so the box itself, you could either call it by your ID number for the box, like box 1234, or some people will call it by the apparatus, the call signal name. So it could be Medic 1 drug box. But typically that box is always staying at the same station, regardless of whether it's on the primary apparatus or reserve. So that's kind of how we handle that. Is I'll show you real quick here. I know it's a little little off topic for today, but um, just in case other folks are interested too. In the controlled substance module, when you click in here, you'll see basically your different events. So arriving check, restock, transfer, usage, and all these names are customized based on what you want to call these events. But basically, you select your event and then select what unit that you're checking. So Medic 1 drug box and Engine 1 drug box, we have those assigned to Station 1. So that's why those are showing up. But you also will see if you're an administrator like I am right now, you'll also see your other restock locations like your vaults. So normally a medic, a normal medic will just see their boxes at that station. But again, if you're an admin, you would see a couple other items there. So hopefully that helps a little bit, Jeremy. But we did another webinar specifically for controlled substances, so I can send you that link and then answer any questions that you might have as well. Oh, and I see your note. So good. Glad that makes sense. Great. Well, anything else, Robbie? Any other questions I might have missed?
No, I think we covered pretty much everything. I'll just kind of open up one last time if we have additional questions. Anything else coming in? We got a couple more minutes, but really appreciate everyone. Thanks for the questions, and want to make this as interactive as possible. Ryan and I are happy to follow up with you too. I'll have a recording out to everyone of this as well. But before we go, I did want to share, if you liked what you saw today, I'm going to launch this real quick. If you like what you saw and want to take this a step further, maybe get some more decision makers on board and schedule a team demo, we're happy to do that. And would you like to look into pricing the vehicle module for your department as well? So I'll just let this run here. We can collect anything. And again, if there's any other questions.
Yeah, and Robbie, before we wrap up, I apologize. I forgot I had just a couple of slides I wanted to run through real quick here. For a lot of you out there, especially if you're doing your checks on paper or spreadsheets right now, typically in a lot of conversations we have with folks, they look at the system, they go, yeah, this is great. I think it'd really help us, but what does it cost and what is the return on investment for us? And so what we did is we actually went out to our clients and we tried to quantify what that return on investment typically is. And so we did that exercise, and these were kind of the main areas that we helped people be more efficient in, and not only make things safer, which is the main thing, but reduce their cost and just kind of make their processes more efficient. So I won't go through all these right now, but if you'd like a copy of these slides, just let us know and I can share that. And when we took it one step further and actually put numbers around it, basically for an average department, the average savings was about $7 for each dollar invested in the first year. And then in years 2 and beyond, we have an implementation fee that's part of our service. So in years 2 and beyond, when you don't have that implementation fee anymore, the return actually goes up even more to about $12 per dollar invested. So that's something we're really proud of and really stand behind. And hopefully that's helpful for you as well as you're trying to get approval to maybe move forward with something like this. We actually have an ROI calculator that you can fill out for your department and run, kind of run these numbers and see what it would look like for you. So just wanted to close on that. Robbie, if you wanted to touch on the upcoming events, I know we have the general webinar in a couple weeks, and then I was planning on doing another controlled substance webinar kind of the middle of next month as well.
Great. Great, yeah, you can join us back here in a couple weeks on November 3rd. Hard to believe we're already heading into November, right? But this is a great overview. We're going to do a high-level touch on all of our now 7 modules, and it's kind of fun and interactive. We take a poll at the beginning and kind of dive into the modules that you most want to see, what our attendees want to see. So there's something else you want to take a quick look at, we encourage you to join that as well. Perhaps if you're a client of ours and you have someone who, a neighboring department, and you know that they might benefit from us as well, that's a great way for them to get started too, is to invite them to these overviews. And as Ryan mentioned, we're going to dive into our controlled substance module, another topical webinar towards the end of the month on November 17th. So on that note, again, I'll get a copy of this to everyone if you'd like to share it amongst your team. And thank you very much for joining us today. Ryan, I'll let you close it out.
Yeah, no, thanks, Robbie, for setting this up. And just wanted to thank everyone again for joining. Like I mentioned, if you have any questions, if you'd like a team demo to share with other folks, just let us know. We're happy to do that. That's typically actually what we'll do is we'll do kind of one-on-one demos with different agencies. But yeah, hopefully this was helpful. And again, appreciate your time, and hopefully we'll see you next time. Thanks,
Thanks,
guys.
everyone.
Thanks, Robbie.
Thanks, Ryan.